反腐是我们共产党永葆青春的一个秘籍。
少数服从多数。
我们存17年零上访。
我自愿加入中国共产党。
在工作岗位中要保持清正廉洁。
On June the 12th, 2020, a court in Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region announced its verdict in the case of a senior official in Hunan province who'd been accused of corruption. Xiang Li, the former deputy director of the Hunan Provincial People's Congress Standing Committee, was found guilty of accepting bribes. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison and fined 6 million yuan. He was also ordered to return all the property and cash he'd obtained by illicit means. Xiang Li was the latest high-ranking official to face justice since the 18th National Congress of the CPC launched a major crackdown on corruption in 2012. The intervening 8 years had seen a succession of tigers and flies, senior leaders and lowly bureaucrats arrested, put on trial and punished. This campaign has been widely welcomed by the public. Putting power in a cage, as Party General Secretary Xi Jinping described it, is now the new normal. In Xiang Li's case, a special team had been set up in July 2019 to investigate him. It was led by Zhu Guoning, Deputy Procurator General of Liuzhou City, Guangxi. Zhu had considerable experience of handling such cases, having been on the front line of the fight against corruption for several years. Back in 2015, he'd prosecuted a high-ranking official in Guangdong province, but he would find Xiang's case particularly challenging.
像丽丽这个案件的话呢，是跟我以往办的案件里的特点比较突出。一个是它位高权重，第二个特点就是它的隐蔽性很强，基本上呢是采用的白手套的这个形式来收取贿赂，他用了很多的心思去逃避这个侦查，所以事前的话呢做了攻守同盟的这个准备，所以在侦破这个案件和起诉审判这个案件当中，给我们带来了一定的难度。
Xiang Li has a brother. His name is Ming Ming, and in 1994 he resigned from his post as a township official and set up a real estate company. Xiang Li at the time was a senior party official in Changsha, capital of Hunan province. Fearing accusations of nepotism, he refused to let his brother do business in the western part of the city, for which he was responsible. However, when he was promoted to vice mayor of Changsha, it became evident to the two of them that his power and influence was beginning to play an almost irresistible role in Ming Ming's business affairs. Xiang Ming was discovering that more people were seeking him out with business propositions. As a result, his company was doing very well. Gradually, Xiang Li began to succumb to temptation. In the second half of 2018, Xiang Li, by this time Deputy Director of the Hunan Provincial People's Congress Standing Committee, responded to a request from a local businessman to change the designation of a plot of land from commercial to residential development. For this favor, the businessman paid the brother, Xiang Ming, 37 million yuan, or over $5 million US. Prosecutor Zhu Guoning began his investigation into the case by carefully reviewing the relevant files. He and his assistant, Jia Xiuxia, were aware that the tiniest detail could be pivotal to the case.
这个办理这种案件的话呢，内心的话呢， 是有一种说不出的滋味，因为这些落马的干部都是受到党的教育多年的培养，也为社会为人民流过汗出了力，也建立了一些这个业绩。当他们在这个廉洁方面没有能够自律的时候受到法律的制裁。从感情方面，我们内心是感到这是惋惜吧。但是从法律这个角度来说，人有情，法律是无情的，所以我们也真诚的这个希望他们能够认罪伏法，早日的回到社会。
Born in 1962, Xiang Li showed ambition from a young age. He worked hard at his studies, earning a doctorate in management. He started his career as a minor publicity officer in a commune. He rose steadily through the party ranks, eventually becoming vice mayor of Changsha and director of the provincial department of commerce and vice governor of Hunan. His father had also been a party official, serving as head of Hangdong County in Hunan. He'd been a popular leader, admired for his honesty and the good work he'd done on behalf of the local people. However, the old man was concerned about his two sons. He could see the potential danger in one of them being in business and the other in government. Xiang Li grew up in a family home he shared with his parents and brother in the old compound of the Hangdong County Committee in Hunan. The flat allocated to his father covered little more than 70 square meters. Many details reveal how basic their living conditions were back then. The room shared by Li and Ming, with its 2 single beds, remains just as it was when they were boys. From its earliest days, the Communist Party of China has steadfastly resisted all forms of corruption. On August the 4th, 1926, 5 years after the CPC's founding, the Central Committee issued its first order targeting corruption, a notice on purging corrupt officials. The founding of the People's Republic marked a shift in the CPC's identity. No longer was it a party leading the people to seize power through revolution. Instead, it was a ruling party responsible for the nation's destiny. Aware of issues within some party and government institutions and of criminal activity in the private sector, the CPC in 1951 launched the 3 Antis campaign targeting extravagance, corruption and bureaucracy. This was followed shortly after by the 5 Antis campaign, aimed at eradicating bribery, tax evasion, the theft of state assets, cheating on government contracts and the theft of capital. These campaigns had a significant influence on creating a positive social climate in the early days of New China. The reform and opening up introduced at the end of the 1970s brought with it certain unhealthy trends. Their spread created new challenges for the party, and in response it implemented a series of anti-corruption measures. In 1978, a new Central Commission for Discipline Inspection was elected, and in 1986, the National Administrative Supervision System was restored. The party recognizes that corruption is the biggest threat it faces, especially when it may harm people's vital interests. Since its 18th National Congress in 2012, under General Secretary Xi Jinping's leadership, the party has been resolutely promoting the fight against corruption and the effort to enforce strict discipline in its internal governance. It has acted with determination and courage to punish wrongdoing.
In 新的征程上，我们要牢记打铁必须自身硬的道理，增强全面从严治党永远在路上的政治自觉， 坚定不移推进党风廉政建设和反腐败斗争，坚决清除一切损害党的先进性和纯洁性的因素，清除一切侵蚀党的健康机体的病毒，确保党不变质、不变色、不变味儿，确保党在新时代坚持和发展中国特色社会主义的历史进程中，始终成为坚强领导核心。
18大以来，党和国家各项事业当中，我认为全面从严治党是成就最突出、老百姓认同程度最高的领域之一。那么，如果我们横向比较一下，现在世界上这么多的国家，这么多的党，包括执政党也很多，哪个党有中国共产党这样的自我革命精神？哪个党清理党内的问题，会有中国共产党这样大的决心、这样大的力度、这样好的效果？可以说一个也找不着。
China, with the largest population in human history, is at a critical moment in its development. The CPC is well aware of the threat corruption poses to the country and society. It fully understands that effectively eradicating corruption will have a direct impact on, and may even be decisive to, the country's rejuvenation. Its comprehensive and determined struggle against corruption is a form of self-reform. As a major test of its political courage and wisdom, this will be a difficult process. In Guizhou province in southwest China, there's a small village made famous by an official seal. Its name is Guiyue, and the celebrated seal was created and carved by its own residents. In fact, the seal comprises 5 parts which, put together, bear the inscription Pingqiu Town, Guiyue Village Democratic Fiscal Management Audit. 4 of the parts are kept by 4 villagers' representatives, and the other by a party representative. Reimbursements can only be paid out of village funds with the consent of at least 3 of them. Internet users have hailed this innovation as the greatest official seal in history. Guiyue is part of Jinping County in eastern Guizhou. The county has a population of roughly 240,000, about 90% of whom belong to ethnic minority groups. Guiyue is an ethnic Dong village located in a gorge. Surrounded by mountains, it's a remote place that historically was desperately poor. Prior to 2006, the village's finances had been the source of considerable friction. People there were concerned about how its 2 committees, the village committee and the village party committee, were spending its money. Each committee published its own financial accounts, but some villagers were so skeptical about these documents that they made a public show of tearing them up. The villagers have an important visitor today, Tan Hongyong, chairman of the People's Congress of Pingqiu Township. Tan Hongyong is a college-educated former soldier. Back in 2001, he became Guiyue's party secretary. He worked hard and was eventually elected to the township government. Tan is a great enthusiast for grassroots democratic management reform. In Tan Hongyong's day, the residents inevitably ensured that the village's financial income and expenditure dominated the agenda. Tan Hongyong felt helpless in the face of the villagers' criticisms.
五办上实施之前呢，我们村里面的这个干警关系还是比较紧张。比如说我们召开这个群众大会的时候，很少有人乐意参加啊。那时候。
喂，通车！广大村民，欢迎前面做好新冠病毒疫苗接种前期准备工作的动作，充分利用广播、媒体、微信群等方式进行多方面的宣传，提高群众知晓率和接种的意愿。
The current village party secretary is 51-year-old Tan Yuanyu. He was originally entrusted with one part of the seal as an ordinary representative of the villagers.
在五办章公章之前，我们这个村里的财务就是用的一个是村里面的办公用品，就是题目纸张啊，还有一些接待会啊，还有蔬菜会、沙理会啊，这些等等这些。
The exercise of supervision over party officials has long been practiced within the CPC. As early as the years immediately after the founding of New China, ordinary citizens were encouraged to submit reports anonymously if they were aware that their leaders were guilty of wrongdoing. These reports were collected and reviewed by more senior leaders who decided what action would be taken in the event that the party's rules had been broken. In 2006, a nationwide campaign to encourage the highest standards of behavior among Communist Party members was launched. For Guiyue village, it brought an opportunity to dispel a shadow that had been hanging over it for more than a year. Tan Hongyong resolved that a solution must be found to the village's financial issues. On the evening of February the 21st, 2006, a meeting of party members and villagers was held. The discussions focused on making village affairs more transparent and ensuring greater democracy in fiscal management. The solution they came up with was innovative: the 5-piece seal. No expense would be approved unless all 5 parts were brought together, 4 held by villagers' representatives and the 5th by a party official. An elderly carpenter named Tan Hongzan volunteered to make the seal. He dug out his old tools, found a piece of pear wood, and began to carve. Yet, at the time, the village's party members were apprehensive. Was what they were planning actually legal? Each piece of the seal is numbered and bears an inscription: Pingqiu Town, Guiyue Village, Democratic, Fiscal Management, and Audit. The signs of wear and tear point to regular use. When the system was first introduced, Tan Yuanyu had his doubts. Although he still thought the idea was a good one, he wondered if it would really make a difference.
把章拿给我的时候啊，我就说这个章啊很不好用，所以呢，如果你做好了，就是做好了，那么要提这肯定跟我们的支书主任是肯定有尴尬的事情是吧？有争论的。如果做不好，那么又对不起我们的村老百姓。
The system of fiscal management using the 5-piece seal was launched on April the 3rd, 2006.
但是支书本7333块，支书本现在但是东红镇呢又帮扶了5000，木材管理费是3390元。看一下，蒙北管理费150哈，北县经费5030元。这个存在都是木池结构的房子，那么。 我们检查消防的时候，发现很多农户的线路瓦化了。那么我们村里面就用一笔钱帮我们农户把线整理好，然后这个费用得到大家的认可，然后再把这张盖下去的。那这一张呢就是接待费啊， 就是招待放电影工作人员，就是我们这里的电影参加商嘛，每年都要来这里1、2次。那么他们来呢没有什么伙食，那么我们真接待伙食了，那就大家都同意报了，就开这个厂。
Doubts about the five-piece seal's effectiveness in promoting transparency and democratic supervision were quickly being dispelled.
我们开始的时候是要5办都同意才能盖，后来呢我们又来开会，对吧？因为有争议嘛，5个人对吧？都有不同的意见嘛，我们就改成3/4的同意了，那么少数服从多数。
Some village officials found their requests for reimbursement were rejected.
有一张发票就是这样的，他呢，我们曾从呢下县城去办4家的事情，后来呢，因为圣殿呢也办了城里面的事，但是他后来呢把他的车费发掉，出差发掉，到城委会报账。好，我们经过我们五合章领导小组的审核以后，觉得呢这张发票，我们主任的主要目的就是去签组的目的就是去办4家的事，然后再办城里面的事，圣殿办城里面的事，这张发票呢，应该是不合理，不能报销。
Prior to 2006, the village accounts were settled once a year. After 2006, that changed to once a quarter. The villagers were quickly warming to the new openness.
老百姓对我们的信用已经达到了很高的一个水准。
This is Tan Hongyang's work diary. It faithfully records his daily activities at the time when he was village party secretary. It reveals details of the democratic fiscal management team from its inception to its re-election. It also charts the gradual improvement in the way the village managed its finances. This new approach to fiscal management has brought about some radical changes: greater openness, more democratic decision-making, horizontal instead of vertical supervision, and bottom-up rather than top-down responsibility. In practice, these changes make it virtually impossible for officials to squander the villagers' hard-earned money. Guiye is just one of 700,000 administrative villages in China, but as an example of how democratic fiscal management can be embraced, it's worthy of special recognition. A bidding conference is underway in the village of Hochan in Wuyi County, Zhejiang. Up for grabs is the contract for an environmental cleanup project.
那武义县白杨街道后城村这个环境保洁项目，现在投标现在开始，一共交了4个公司的标书。那么根据交标文件的规定，首先是那个进行资格审查。
Among those in attendance is Chen Yuefu, the director of the Village Affairs Supervisory Committee. This is his second year in the post, having been elected in 2020.
那下面开始投标，这个底标是20万，19万到20万之间，分成51个乒乓球在这里，0号是对表19万，1号是19万200，50号是20万，谁摸到最小，谁中标。
这样子呢，反正总的来讲，我们避免一些群众村民呢有些怀疑的这些状况。 因为我们呢，平时也包括招投标程序走完了以后，他们村民都知道的呢。只要是走法，我们呢走法的农户的时候呢，也要一一向他们呢解答清楚。
20号、32号、21号是19万4700。 51名节中标。
Hochan has just over 1,000 inhabitants. With its wide and smooth road, carefully restored lakefront, row on row of beautiful low buildings between paddy fields and fish ponds, it's one of the most affluent villages in Zhejiang. Yet it has experienced an unusual history. In the early 2000s, 80 hectares of Hochan's land was expropriated for the development of an industrial park and other construction projects. In exchange, the village received 19 million yuan in compensation. A village official suggested investing part of the money in building a workshop and developing the collective economy. However, some villagers objected. They argued it would be better to share the money out, for fear that otherwise it might find its way into some officials' pockets. Their concerns stemmed from a lack of transparency surrounding the village's finances. In 2003, Chen Yu-Qiu was a member of the village party committee. She found herself attending meetings day and night to work out what was the best way forward for the village. Chen, having started out as the director of Hochan's Women's Committee at the age of 19, has been a local leader for over 40 years and knows the village inside out. A month of discussions led to the village fiscal management supervisory group being set up. Its members were elected by the villagers through a secret ballot. This third-party, independent body overseeing financial affairs was the embryonic form of the village's supervisory committee, the first of its kind in China.
当时选这个监委会的人员呢，都是很激动，都是要把村里呢搞好，这个人呢要选好。
Being subjected to supervision by the committee encourages village officials to be more proactive.
像以前临时联谊桥，怕村干部乱花钱，到现在呢，怕村干部不花钱，想多花钱呢，多干点事情。
Today, every resident, whether via a TV at home or using a mobile phone, can check the village's monthly financial statements, in which income and expenditure are clearly detailed.
陈玉球办公用茶叶开支500，运垃圾工资月领的10500，买防疫口罩678，春剪花剪苗木工资中旺的6300，这个是周继聪经手的，广告制作费7500。
Officials in charge of various departments under the village committee hold a weekly meeting to discuss the village's financial and other affairs ahead of an open forum. This general meeting of residents is another example of Hochan's continuing efforts to involve them more widely in grassroots self-government. Wu Xiaodong was appointed as the party secretary of Hochan last year. He accepts that just as the demands from upper levels of government are high, so too are the expectations of the villagers for a better standard of living.
现在的话，我们村17年，村级事务零上访，工程建设零投诉，干部零违纪。
If one of the criteria for judging a system is whether those living under it are happy or not, then in Hochan's case the response is resoundingly positive. Of the changes that have transformed the village in the past 17 years, one of the best received is the improvement in the life of the elderly. Back in 2004, after the Village Affairs Supervisory Committee was established, it was agreed that half of the village's collective income each year would be divided among the residents. This means that today, every villager who has joined the cooperative shareholding scheme receives a 2,400 yuan annual bonus. For those aged over 60, the bonus is 3,000 yuan, and they are also entitled to a free trip to Beijing. In addition, the 144 people over 70 enjoy 2 free meals a day at a special canteen for the elderly. Hochan continues to explore ways of allowing villagers to participate more widely in grassroots self-government. The Hochan experience, as it's known, has now spread to other villages across the country. It's acknowledged as a model for rural governance in China. In the face of a new international situation and confronted with the issues brought by rapid domestic economic and social development, China decided to step up the training of cadres. With their greater knowledge and skills, the reasoning went, they could address the new challenges. The CPC has always prioritized learning. Unremitting study has been essential to maintaining its progressive character and purity. The strong leadership the party has provided for the great cause of building socialism with Chinese characteristics is also based on studying. In 1933, the Marxist Communist School was founded in the city of Ruijin. Today, it is the party school of the CPC Central Committee. In the early years of the Revolutionary War, when the CPC was still very young, it was already paying close attention to educating and training cadres. Workshops were established for peasants and night schools for workers. Local party schools were founded in the north and south of the country. Specific problems facing the Chinese Revolution were identified and addressed, and efforts were directed to improving the competence of cadres. In response to the needs of the evolving revolution and of the war against the Japanese, the party established one educational institution after another: the Central Party School, the Northern Shaanxi School, the Chinese Resisting Japanese Aggression University of Military and Politics, and the Lu Xun Art Academy in Yan'an. As a result, large numbers of cadres were trained in a relatively short period of time, who became highly influential in politics, military affairs, economic management, science and technology, culture, education, and other fields.
中国共产党取得今天的成就，原因经验很多，其中很重要的一条就是重视学习，善于学习。作为一个党，它在不同时期要面对着很多复杂的问题，那么要解决这些问题，就得有能力，而这个能力就要不断的提升，提升的一个重要的途径就要学习。
Located near the Summer Palace in northwest Beijing is the Central Party School, a training ground for the elite cadres. The school's annual intake includes officials of the prefecture and provincial level who come to further their studies on political theory. There is also a special class made up of younger officials. Mainly aged between 45 and 50, these will one day form the backbone of the national government.
党的19大报告提出要增强8个方面的执政本领。那我们看，所有的干部，你都不敢说你目前的本领已经够用。可能某一方面你有优势，但是可能过不多长时间你又换工作了，你职位升了，你过去只管一个方面，现在你做主要领导了，你管全局了，那么你的能力够不够用？那很多人往往是不够用的，包括来我们这学习的很多领导干部，发自内心的讲，有本领恐慌的问题。
The Central Party School has other functions besides cadre training. It also serves as a party think tank. What happens within its walls will have a direct impact on political decision-making and thus the daily lives of the 1.4 billion Chinese people. On May the 10th, 1978, the journal Theory Trends, sponsored by the Central Party School, published an article under the headline, "Practice is the sole criterion for testing truth." On May the 11th, the Guangming Daily carried the full text. It provoked a discussion which eventually developed into a nationwide debate concerning the standard of truth. Ultimately, it prepared the way ideologically for the historic decisions taken at the third plenary session of the 11th CPC Central Committee. At the entrance to the Central Party School, 4 bold characters are carved in granite. They read, "Seek truth from facts." These same 4 characters were inscribed by Chairman Mao Zedong for the Central Party School in Yan'an in 1941. Starting in 1943, Mao himself served for 4 years as the president of the Central Party School. He identified it as a key incubator where large numbers of political leaders and theoreticians could be cultivated. In his lectures to the students, Mao set out a clear path for achieving victory in the new democratic revolution. The party has 95 million members today, who benefit from the improvements in creating party organizations geared towards learning. Across the country, there are some 3,000 party schools of county level and above. They include the one in Beijing, China's so-called Old Red capital. During the Agrarian Revolutionary War, the Chinese Communists created a new revolutionary strategy by adapting the general principles of Marxism-Leninism to the practice of the Chinese Revolution. They would encircle the cities from the countryside and seize political power by armed force. It was in Beijing, the founding site of the Chinese Soviet Republic, that this strategy was developed and applied. Education at the Beijing Party School primarily focuses on understanding how hard-won political power was and learning about history through field trips.
宣告成立了中华苏维埃共和国，开启了中国共产党人局部执政的伟大实践、伟大预言。所以，农村包围城市、武装夺取政权这个思想，是在苏区这个革命实践当中不断的走向成熟，慢慢探讨和摸索出来。
The 40 men and women, mostly in their 30s and 40s, sitting quietly and taking in these words, are party members from Chengdu's Xunjiang community. Among them is Zhong Ying, who was elected as the Community Party Committee's Deputy Secretary in January 2021. The community is the basic unit of contact between the party and the people in a city. Local officials like Zhong Ying are the frontline workers who execute party policy. Their expertise and conduct are vital in shaping the overall image of officials and ensuring the sound development of the party, and therefore the country. For Zhong Ying, the training is an invigorating experience.
第一，肯定是要坚定共产党员的信念嘛。第二，我觉得首先在工作岗位中要保持清正廉洁。第三，就是要一心一意的为群众服务。
向革命先烈敬献花篮仪式，迎中国共产党党旗。
我宣誓，我志愿加入中国共产党。
我志愿加入中国共产党，随时准备为党和人民牺牲一切。
Speaking at the opening of a training course for young and middle-aged cadres at the Central Party School, General Secretary Xi Jinping spoke about their role. He said cadres should resolve to be faithful inheritors of the party's glorious traditions and a fine style of work. Today, at the time of its centenary, the party's 95 million members are upholding self-reform as one of its key characteristics. As long as they continue to do so, there is every reason to believe that 100 years from now, the Communist Party of China will still be retaining its youthful vigor.
一艘小小航船划破黑暗，从雾霭沉沉到红日高扬。我是熊熊火焰照亮前路，是万千青年燃烧的信念。我是钢铁意志征服困难，从历久弥坚到盖地还天，一棵百年大树扎根泥土，它枝繁叶茂，它青春不老。我是坚实臂膀把你托起，在殿堂之上，在天更两旁。你想问我是谁，我就是你，我在你心上，你在我心间。滚滚黄沙之中，汗滴如土，用满头青丝换绿叶无边。悠悠青山之上，
不破全胜，绝不收兵。
匆忙，用花样年华换万种欢颜。
如果现在再不期待我们的现代化事业有何的章法？
在殿堂之上，在天更两旁，你想问我是谁，我就是你，我在你心上，你在我心间。
人民最美好生活的向往，就是我们的奋斗目标。
在殿堂之上，在天更两旁，你想问我是谁，我就是你，我在你心上，你在我心间。我在你心上，你在我心间。